All right, we'll just take a couple more minutes. I'll go and do a quick check.
Okay.
All right, I think the parents are going to take some more time to join. I think we can just get started.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, all right. Let's get started, but we'll see. I think as and when the parents join, this might be a bit challenging, but you might have to circle back to a quick recap on what was covered.
All right, no worries.
All right, great. Okay, so Veronica, I understand you already know Neelam.
Yes, I do indeed. I know that lovely face.
All right, great, great. All right, Neelam, I'll just hand it over to you then.
Are you going to start with an introduction?
Well, seeing it, okay, yeah, sure. So
That you have it all in one piece since it's recorded, and then you can share
absolutely,
it.
absolutely, yeah. All right, so to start, let me turn on my camera. All right, so I'm Cyrus. I am an organizational psychologist here at Improve Me Institute. I'd like to introduce you all to Neelam. Neelam is a stress management and parenting expert with over 20 years of experience. She's also the founder of Inspire Wellness. That's the company we're collaborating with right now to bring you this very interesting, informative piece on how to manage your child during exam season at home. She is also a globally recognized leader in corporate wellness and a mother of two. Over to you, Neela.
Thank you so much, Cyrus. So this really is a presentation that tries to get to the heart of, dealing with the uncertainty as adults, and then how we can regulate with our teens. Already there's uncertainty there, there's pressure, the exam stress. And so with so many moving parts, what's our role as parents, right? So thank you so much again for the introduction. Basically, having been in investment banking, lived in London, Hong Kong, and Dubai, for me, it's really important that we not just kind of approach things with a bandage solution, but get to the root cause. And so that's what I studied at Harvard Medical School around lifestyle medicine. Really, how do we use our daily habits to be preventative, to allow us to be the building blocks for us to thrive, in terms of health, holistic health, mental, social, emotional, and how we can piece together. I've had 20 years of experience in mindfulness, movement, breath work, meditation. So what are the most pragmatic tools that we can use in our homes, in our families, to really create this environment of thriving, of peace, of harmony, right? I've also been through the lockdown in Hong Kong, which was about 3 years during the global pandemic. So understanding what that feels like in terms of this prolonged state of uncertainty and anxiety, which almost mirrors what's happening at the moment in the Middle East, in the UAE, and how what we'll do is go through a couple of techniques to really create some nervous system regulation to allow a feeling of calm despite the VUCA world we're living in. So ironically, I've actually come full circle back into these high pressure environments, working with, global institutes, a lot of finance, fast money in environments where pressure is high. And so in order to really create that sense of sustainability in terms of their energy, we're needing to take ownership as employers as well as employees. So how we can share these tools, that I teach in corporate well-being programs, but here in the home, how we can share that responsibility between both parent and child. So in terms of taking that holistic approach, there are 6 pillars that I speak on in terms of creating that feeling of well-being. At Inspire Wellness, my business here in Dubai, we boil it down to exercise, nutrition, sleep, stress management, social connection, and mindful choices. So, even the best psychologists have said that even if you do the first 3 of these, good daily exercise, high quality nutrition, and adequate sleep, that's mental health taken care of by about 80%. If you're going to eat junk, you're going to feel like junk. Especially in the teenage years, hormones are changing. And so it actually calls for increased sleep, increased hours of sleep. The melatonin is much higher. There's a spike in the teenage years. And also that daily exercise as a release of the adrenaline and the cortisol that might be running through. For me, my starting and ending point is at pillar number 4, at stress management. Because if we're stressed, it's the stress that hijacks a lot of our choices. We lean towards sugar and caffeine to give us these quick boosts rather than mindfully choosing nutrition. We lean towards feeling a sense of isolation or putting pressure on ourselves to just keep getting through the day rather than connecting with others deeply and socially. We lean towards substances or ways in which we can numb ourselves from emotion, scrolling on a smartphone, versus being able to really detect what's happening, what my triggers are, and how I can move forward in a substantive and a sustainable way. So I want to just also ask, this, before we can create change, we need to first create an awareness. So ask yourself, how busy is my mind right now? Yeah, if my thoughts are the vehicles on the road and my mind is the road, how many vehicles, how bad is the traffic today? Yeah, so even just having that litmus test without judgment, it's not about, oh, you're not coping with your stress, or you're getting all panicky, or you're overthinking. Just ask yourself, how busy is my mind right now? It's something we can even, start a dinner conversation when we're having a family dinner. Where are you at? So that I have that awareness. We have a shared sense of connection and responsibility about, okay, maybe they're more on edge, there's so much going on, or maybe there's a greater sense of relaxation. So this can be a moment to to coach. This can be a moment of learning as well. As parents, we need to be able to detect when we listen and when there's a coachable moment, when what we're saying will actually land correctly, right? So a big, this is one of my favorite quotes. My life has been filled with terrible misfortune, most of which never happened, right? So also understanding the negative bias of the mind. 85% of what we worry about never even happens, right? The moment we hear, oh, a security alert, we're thinking worst case scenario, right? So knowing that we can handle it, because we end up extrapolating to these worst case scenarios. So 79% say that they handled it better than expected, or there was a learning in what they've experienced. So being able to understand that this is just how the mind plays. It will go to catastrophize. It will overgeneralize. So taking a moment to pause and reflect of, where are my emotions? Are they being hijacked by this exaggeration, especially a negative exaggeration that my mind is so primed towards? And I want to ask you, when you look at these two, what is more dangerous, the lion or the mosquito, right? So generally when we look, okay, there's the big threat is the lion, right? But actually it's the mosquito that takes many more lives a year through malaria and disease and things, right? So what has this got to do with pressure? It's not about these big one-off threats. It's about the compounding impact of stress. When stress becomes something that we're dealing with every day, all day, it becomes chronic stress. And chronic stress has led to, the WHO has said 90% of all illnesses is born from chronic stress, whether it's cancer, whether it's heart disease, whether it's cognitive degeneration. It's coming from this extended amount of pressure that we're putting on ourselves and normalizing that pressure. Yeah, so understanding the neuroscience is so important as well. When we're in this stress mode, we're coming from this place of sympathetic nervous system. We're in that fight or flight. We feel like we're being threatened. Our survival feels threatened. And so as a result, adrenaline spikes, cortisol spikes. We're thinking from our fear center, right? So this is emotional rather than logical. Our time frame is immediate. I just want a quick fix versus seeing things in the long term. The attention is much more self-centered. If I'm feeling like I'm under threat, if I'm feeling like the weight of the world is on my shoulders for exam time, I'm not going to be as caring to my family members or to my friends. I'm not going to be thinking about others as if I'm feeling the brunt of that pressure. Yeah. So even in terms of what this does physiologically is when we're in the stress environment, our body is made to move. That's why daily exercise becomes so important as a way of releasing that stress. We're made to move. If you think about fighting or running away, both of them require a physical response. Yeah. So blood is then moved from the brain, from the heart to the musculature into shorter, sharper breaths, higher blood pressure, so that the body is ready to attack or to run. As energy is spiked, the emotion is usually fear, aggressive or anxious in terms of our mood, and it's really dominated by the sympathetic nervous system. If you flip this over to the parasympathetic nervous system, this is your rest and digest. This is the brake in the car versus the accelerator that is a sympathetic nervous system. So it's your ability to relax, to digest the information, to restore the body. We're able to think using the hippocampus, which is the logic side of the brain. We're able to take long-term processes. We're digesting, immunity is higher. Our energy is so much more sustained. We're feeling more harmonious. There's a sense of balance, both emotionally and physically. And we're able to think outside of ourselves, right? So in these high pressure environments, during exam time, or in this sense of upheaval that we're experiencing in the world with geopolitics at the moment, if your teen is reacting more edgy, they're thinking about themselves, they're not really cleaning up after themselves, they're not as responsible around the family chores, they're burning from this nervous system through the sympathetic nervous system. And so also there's a big point here that I want to be able to emphasize. The body cannot distinguish between a real or an imagined threat, right? So remember, 85% of things that we worry about don't even happen. So when our imagination is going rampant and we're thinking of worst case scenarios, our body is responding as though it is happening. And we know this, right? Like, we've gone to a cinema, watched a scary movie, and there's a serial killer around the corner and our heart is racing. We're jumping in our seat. Why does our body respond as if the serial killer is behind our back? Because the mind does not distinguish between a real and an imagined threat. So being able to really get to a place where we are almost going beyond the mind, which we will go through in terms of the techniques later, but being able to supersede the mind and allow the body that feeling of safety that really comes to ground and relax the body, so we can start operating from the parasympathetic nervous system, because that's when learning happens. That's when growth happens, right? That's where the logical response versus the emotional triggers are from. And so the benefits of mindfulness really take us to allow for that pause. It allows us to have a greater short-term memory, have a greater response flexibility. It lowers burnout, anxiety, stress. It improves resilience. It improves empathy and emotional intelligence, feeling socially connected. When I work with large corporations, really bringing much more effective decision making on the table, and greater employee engagement, or just greater engagement in terms of, your teen, your young adult taking more proactive steps towards their learning and towards their future. And so when you're experiencing stress, what are you experiencing? Again, I mentioned that before we can create solutions, before we can create frameworks of tools, we need to understand where we're sitting. We need to have that awareness. It's like we need a diagnosis before we can get the prescription, right? So understanding what are the signals that my body shows, or how do I notice that, yes, I'm moving now from parasympathetic to sympathetic. I'm moving from relaxed to stressed. For some of us, it'll be your heart starts racing, or your palms are sweaty, or there's unexplained tension, your jaw feels tight. And, this is signs to pick up on, these unexplained aches and pains, just feeling weak and tired. When I was in banking, I went through a burnout. And when I hit rock bottom, it didn't matter whether I was sleeping for 6 hours or 12 hours. I would wake up feeling empty, weak, and tired. There was this feeling of nervousness, restlessness, tension, irritability. The mind was always in worry, right? It was hard to focus. I would experience increased heart rate, and now when I'm coaching executives, primarily they're coming to me for depression. They're coming to me for panic attacks when the sympathetic nervous system is on high alert and there's inability to regulate, right? That can also show up, in teens as sleep problems, digestion, so stomach pain, remember, restoration, digestion, these are all within the wheelhouse of the parasympathetic nervous system when we're relaxed. So how this shows up even when we're dealing with work is we're maybe taking on much more time off that we usually do. We're not as motivated. We're focusing on the negative aspects, the things we don't like. We're feeling a sense of trepidation dealing with even simple workflows. And so I want to share that this is from First Aid Mental Health, right? Because I teach for mental health as a first aider. And all of the symptoms are physical. Remember, the body is primed for a physical release when we're stressed. So knowing that, okay, this breathlessness, this loss of appetite, this restlessness, the sweat, feeling sweaty, trembling, heart palpitations, difficulty swallowing, blurry visions, all of this relates to what's happening in mind, right? And I teach yoga and yoga philosophy too. And this is where we really start to see this confluence of the body and the mind. And actually, they're two sides of the same coin. And this is even during the pandemic, when we were experiencing a global lockdown, it was through movement and mindfulness that we were really able, or I could take my clients on a journey to feel relaxed using both that sense of calming techniques, but also through a sense of release physically as well. So, cleaning up the diet, ensuring exercise happens daily, ensuring at least 7 hours of deep sleep, creating that social connection. Now we're in a stage where we're hyper connected through our phones, yet loneliness is at the highest it's ever been for mankind. And loneliness, the US Surgeon General has said, is akin to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's the pressure the body feels when we're operating in a vacuum. Again, this feeling of emotional, social, all connecting to physical markers is being scientifically documented now. And that's why self-care becomes such a paramount routine. Bring it into the home for yourself, but also create family routines so that you're modeling this behavior with your children as things keep evolving. So even in terms of the last pillar, the mindfulness, right? The mindfulness of our choices. It's this addiction to stress and speed that disconnects us from our body, where we just want to keep up, right? We've all binged Netflix saying, okay, I'll just watch one more episode and then I'll go to sleep. Lo and behold, it's 1 a.m., right? Or going in for that sugar versus the hydration that our body is actually wanting. Popping a pill for energy, or caffeine, rather than really getting the endorphins to come through exercise and through movement. And so I want to be able to just let you have a tool that you can rely on in these times. So if you're noticing, okay, there's this sense of anxiety, there's this restlessness, he's a bit snappier, she's seems like there's lots more fear circulating, then doing this calming mechanism really allows you, again, as I said, we're going beyond the mind, because the mind has this tendency to draw to the negative, to catastrophize, to overgeneralize. So we can't tell ourselves, relax, just calm down. And I'm sure you've tried this with yourself or with others, and it's actually been more aggravating, right? So rather than doing that, we go beyond the mind. So we focus on something more subtle than our thoughts. What's more subtle than our thoughts? It's our breath. So you simply place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. Yeah. And you just take a deep breath in and breathe out. And all I want you to do is become aware that as you inhale, there's an expansion happening in the body. And as you exhale, there's a contraction taking place. So you're inhaling and feeling that expansion. Exhaling, feeling the contraction. As you do this, as the body starts to come, the contraction and the expansion will come into the belly rather than the chest. And the chest will be more relaxed and more stable. If we're holding a lot of stress, then the movement is dominated into the chest area because the breath is sharp and shallow. But as we do the calming mechanism, it's almost like a balloon inflating around the belly and deflating as we breathe out. So the inhalation brings active energy, and the exhalation brings relaxation. So in these times of anxiety and stress, we want more relaxation than we want activation. So we want to breathe in for 4 counts and then breathe out for double that, for 8 counts. Okay, so breathing in for 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathing out 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathing in for 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathing out 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. On your own now, breathe in for 4. And breathe out for 8. Just repeating this 2 more times. Breathing in for 4. And breathing out for 8. So this is something that you can do, before study time, revision time starts, before your child enters the exam, before they go to sleep, to allow that nervous energy, that restless mind is quietened down so that they can invite a deeper, restful sleep. Yeah. So you can notice we only did this for 2 minutes, but already there's a shift in energy. So just repeat it for 10 breaths. And as I said, I like to be able to integrate these tools within the day versus, say, do a 1-hour class once a week. It's creating this counterbalance of the daily stress that we're experiencing. So if we're experiencing a few jarring things, headlines, revision timetable, difficult conversations, we can come back just 2 minutes. We can come back to it multiple times a day to come back to feeling more centered and also being in a position where we can address the situation without being emotionally triggered, right? We can address it with clear, logical thinking. So this is something that you can absolutely use any time of day. And the power of breath work is incredible. I teach a three-day breath work course, and it's been studied by Harvard and Yale, and it's shown 218% increase in deep sleep. It's increased well-being by 50%. It lowers stress reduction by lowering cortisol by 50%, 56%, and decreases depression by about 70%. And this is, again, it's not a one-off, right? It's within a month. You need to consistently be doing this. So consistently as stress consistently shows up in our day, we need to then release stress consistently through the day, which is why there's a sense of shared responsibility. When we're breathing, the breath responds before we even have a chance to say anything back, right? So when we're angry, immediately before we even rebuttal, the breath will become faster and sharper. When we're sad, again, we don't even have to say anything. There's nothing that's happening outwardly, but internally, things feel heavy. We're sighing. Yeah, the breath response. But what happens when we're happy? The breath is so light, it's almost undetectable, right? So what we're doing is we're backward engineering. If we can learn how to breathe where it's light and it's gentle, then we're allowing ourselves to put our nervous system back into regulation and put our mood back into positive. And so even here, what do you see? Yeah. Forgive me, the slides didn't show up, so I've had to kind of improvise here with this deck. So if you're looking from right to left, you can see a rabbit. But many people, when they first look at it, they'll see a duck, right? So knowing that both exist, both solutions are correct. There is a rabbit and there is a duck. So even when we're dealing with our teens, or dealing with our employees or dealing with our colleagues, understanding that both opinions can hold true, right? It's not a zero-sum game. So moving from a sense of control that you have to see from my perspective to a collaboration that both perspectives are valid. And, even if you look into nature, how do we deal with others? So I love this study, this piece of research. It showed that when elephants are unwell, the elephants all stop. They form a circle around the sick elephant, and they nurture that sick elephant until they're fine, and then they can join the herd again, and they can all move together. What happens when a penguin is unwell? What happens is they separate the sick penguin, and all the other penguins form a circle that the sick penguin is ostracized from. And so all the well penguins, or the healthy penguins, then move together, banishing the sick penguin. So we've been in circumstances where we've really felt nurtured and supported by our group. And we've also been in situations where we feel ostracized if we're the odd one out. And this is actually much, much more heightened in teenage circles, social circles, right? That's why there's so much more social anxiety and pressure for them to fit in, because there's this fear of them being ostracized or being left out if they aren't in that circle. Which is why in the family, it's so important that we show up as elephants, that we show up where we can gather together and nurture each other so that we can move together, right? And so how do we do this? I want to share with you a quick video. It's a very famous one, so you might have seen it already. Give me a second to spit.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." Yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
That's beautiful. So that's exactly, that's exactly why we're here, to create ways to build that connection so that our children can thrive. And one of the things that, really speaks to me here is the importance of holding space. How do we create these authentic conversations? So firstly, set a neutral environment. If you're seeing your child, your friend, your colleague, they're quite stressed, rather than berate them, at their desk when they're already struggling to revise, or in the office, or in a social gathering, take them for a walk or go for a coffee. Set a neutral scene. Always approach with care rather than confrontation. Like, you really matter to me, so I want to be able to speak openly and honestly. I care about you. And then again, using specific behaviors, like, oh, last night when you said that to Dad, that seemed really out of character. Is everything okay? Versus, why are you so rude to us all the time? Right? So you want to also avoid that overgeneralizing, whether like as if it's a behavior that happens always, or it then kind of feels like a personal attack on their character. Right? So use specific behaviors. Oh, you said you were going to help me with the dishes, and then you just left them all night. So being able to take that specific behavior, and then again, it takes self-regulation on our side to not have that emotional trigger to say, that's so unfair. I want to be able to trust you. To then say, that's really out of character. You usually are, I can trust that when you say something that you do it. What happened last night? And then be there to listen, right? Rather than saying, should I send you a reminder? Have you got it on your calendar? Ask what's going on, and then be ready to listen to what is actually going on. Many a times I'll approach, my daughter or my son with something that's very trivial, and then all of a sudden they'll be sharing something that's happened at school, something they're, that they've been harboring for the last week. So being able to just be that sounding board for them, and then ask them, how can I help? Again, giving them ownership, giving them agency. When we just tell them what to do, we're belittling them. So you want to empower them to make their decisions. Okay, do you want me to help you put that schedule together? Do you want me to, show you how I've set up my Google Calendar? Or just say, okay, no, mom, I got it. Sorry, it slipped. And then say, okay, no worries. I'm here if you need. And then actually check in, a week later. So how's it going? Are you feeling like you're more on top of your calendar and your scheduling? Are you still feeling like you're overwhelmed with the exam revision? How can we make sure that, you're getting the breaks you need as well? So just being able to be in that flow where you're really coming from that space of empathy, but you're giving them license to find their solutions, because that's what empowerment is. As a parent, we don't want to be spoon feeding them, because they're going to be second guessing their capabilities then. And so as a family, how we can support them meaningfully, with quality times, doesn't mean that we have to stop our life and just focus on revolving around them. It's these micro moments, just consistent acts of attention. Or, okay, I'm here if you want to listen, if you want to talk. Or, hey, you want to take a break? Let's just watch one episode of this. Or you've got reading to do? I've got reading to do too. Why don't we get under the covers and read together in bed? And just feel that closeness without needing to feel like it's also for you, like a big task that you have to clear your calendar for. It's the consistency, that quiet, small moments that come together. And then again, when it comes to a teenager, it's validating. It's, we've all been in a space where we don't really have a grip around who we are yet. So validating, when I was a teenager, there were so many things that I was unsure about. Share your own stories. That allows them a sense that it's okay to be vulnerable, right? And hold space, because our children see us as role models. And if they only see us in this light of perfection, then if they're experiencing imperfection, they feel like it's not warranted. It's not acceptable. But we've all grown with our mistakes, right? So allow that reassurance. And the biggest takeaway here is that children, whether they're 5, whether they're 19, they co-regulate based off your presence. So if you're stressed and you're telling them to calm down, they're not picking up on your words, they're picking up on your energy. So coming back to self-care is paramount for you as a parent, because you need to be able to embody that parasympathetic nervous system. You need to be able to embody that relaxation response before you can share it. We can only give what we have. If we're not experiencing regulation in ourselves, if we aren't relaxed and calm, we cannot share it. We cannot model that forward, right? So one of the positive affirmations I like to use when I'm doing the breath work, I'll get the kids together, inhale for 4, exhale for 8. As I inhale, I invite calm. As I exhale, I let go of stress. So I'm intentionally bringing what I want in words and energetically too, through the nervous system and through the breath work. And so I just want to end here understanding the importance of the science of stress, the parasympathetic nervous system, and what this does to brain chemistry, to reactivity emotionally, to feeling isolated. It's built in our chemistry. So when we understand it, we don't take it so personally either. And then go back to belly breathing, go back to that parasympathetic breath work. Inhale for 4, exhale for 8, and really bring in that longer, slower, deeper breaths out for the parasympathetic nervous system to kick in. Have these open conversations. Be action oriented as well. So if you're feeling that restlessness, go for a run. Let's go for a walk. It's fine. And bring in those family routines, that check-in. How busy is your mind today? Just when we're more aware, then the tools, the techniques feel much more relevant than if we're just doing it for the sake of doing it every day. Yeah. And then, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, on my website, Inspire Wellness. I do personal coaching. I handle one-on-one, whether it's with teenagers or with parents, with executives. There's a lot of resources on the website, free ebooks, free mindfulness courses. I teach breath work, I teach meditation. And at a time like this, where we're at such a crossroads, just being able to serve feels like a real privilege. So I'm really grateful to be able to share this with you. And, if you've got any questions, feel free to let me know at any time. Have you got any questions, Cyrus or Veronica? I'm happy to hear. Otherwise, we could.
Not right now, but maybe in due time. For now, I found this very educational.
Neelam, I thought that was fantastic. I had one question maybe. So, I mean, I really believe in a lot of what you've said holds truth, and even some of those techniques as adults, I think that we've experienced, and I've even used them myself at difficult times. My question would be more, and as you know, I've got two teenage boys. I've got a 14 and 16-year-old. They're very different personalities. The older one's a lot more confident and self-motivated, etc. The younger one also motivated, but he's a little quieter in his being, in how he is and how he approaches things. So my question to you is that whilst we see the benefits, or whilst I see the benefits of a lot of these things, how would you suggest communicating these benefits to teens, particularly when they're, you know what it's like, they just, they don't necessarily stop, and they're so busy and they're moving so fast that to get them to slow down and to do some of these and the techniques, etc., is sometimes a little bit more challenging. So how do you find with teenagers that you get that message through so that they can do it, rather than saying, oh, mum, don't be silly, I've got, other things on.
Yeah, 100%. So I think, again, like, it's easier to address this when there is a pain point. So if you're noticing, okay, he's a bit more withdrawn, or he seems really stressed. So, would you like me to share something to help you relax? Or if they say, Mom, I couldn't fall asleep, I'm really worried about tomorrow. So again, these are great kind of inflection points to say, okay, now that he's established a pain point, then the technique feels much more relevant. But sometimes that awareness isn't really there yet. So it's as simple as, okay, let's just do this for 2 minutes. You tell me how you feel afterwards. 90% of the time, they feel better wherever they are. So it's having a little bit of an experimental mindset with some curiosity. But you're right, in a sense that we're so busy, and so time is of the essence. So I would usually get them to do it when you've got them captive. So if it was like, if I'm dealing with, say, executives and they're going up to 50th floor, this is what I'll say. When you're in the lift anyway, you're captive, do the breath work. Yeah. So for you, maybe if they're in the car and they're just kind of shuttling from one place to another, to help them even switch gears, to get them in that state of mind where they're relaxed, clear in their thinking. Okay, we're in the car. We'll play the radio. After 2 minutes, let's just try this breath work for all of us. Or, even, what I've noticed is there are moments where even I'm snappy as a mother and I'm feeling out of sorts and I'm navigating, life. And so it has come full circle where the kids are like, Mom, should I leave you for 20 minutes? You want to do your meditation? Because they've seen how that helps me to regulate, and it then has this cascading effect with the children. So I think, firstly, like when you're able to model it, even say, this has really helped me. Can you just do this for me? And then be like, I've done this for about a week now, and I've noticed that this, just be very open. This really helps me think clearly, or I don't have as much road rage when I'm driving, when I feel more relaxed. And then again, once you open that with this feeling of vulnerability, we're not perfect. We're all this work in progress. They will start to also say, hey, you know what? It actually did help me before my soccer practice. I wasn't as on edge, or, in that sense. So I think it takes a little bit of strategic coaxing, to be honest. But when you're able to shine a light on how there, moments where they're feeling stressed, so that they feel the sense of relevance towards feeling more calm, and then shine a light on the effects of it. After 2 minutes, notice how you're feeling. Notice your mind. Is it as busy? And so when you create both the preventative approach and then also the remedy, they take to it in a way, because it's a very low hanging fruit. It's not a 1 hour, let's do this together, so I'm asking you to say no to something else. It's 2 minutes. You can be walking and doing it too. We're breathing anyway. I'm not asking you to do something different. I'm just asking you to do it intentionally.
Very
Does
good.
that help?
Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Perfect. Then maybe we can wrap up this session if there are no more questions. And then if Cyrus, if you get any questions off the back of the recording, then let me know, and I'm happy to kind of share some of my insights.
Sure, absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, it was lovely to be here, and thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Neelam. That was lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you. All right. Have a good evening.
All right.
Likewise,
take
you
care.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, Neelam, just a minute. Oh goodness.